welcome. Admit this is probably the first of maybe many. We'll see what happens, depending on how comfortable I feel with it all. But as my first video, I wanted to talk about something I recently got a bit of an interest in. And, well, I suppose I wanted to start really with, well, the many things I've decided to do a video about is Arknights. Today I'm just going to give a very brief overview, though I might ramble and I apologise sincerely for that. But so explain, what is Arknights? Ignore the crazy in the background there. Arknights has not given me a type, I swear. He has, believe me. He definitely has not. But to explain what Arknights is, it is a tower defense gacha game. Now, for many of you, you will have heard that and just went, what the hell is a gacha game? Now, you've probably heard of tower defense though, so we can start with that bridge. So to explain, the gameplay of Arknights typically is more of a tower defense type situation. So you will have a number of operators, for example, all these little lot here, and if I use my assistant Slapland here as an example, each of them will be on the board as a delightful little chibi, like so. If I use a current outlet, like so. And, well, essentially be quite a variety of individuals coming to assail your defensive point. Those individuals, of course, will be a variety of charming characters, all of which we can get into down the road. And as for the gacha part, some of you may or may not be familiar with what gacha is, but if I use it as a good example, they tend to feature one of these, a banner, which requires a bit of in-game currency, a rundum in this case, though the name of the currency will vary. In Arknights' case, the only thing on offer here is one of these lovely lot, all of which are fairly alright, I'd say, in this case, but most may not pull this one, so may look for a more particular banner, depending on the character, or if they are limited, meaning that they are not likely to turn up anytime soon again. And, well, this is where the money making comes from. The game initially is free to play, but, and there's a big but here, the addictive side could come in through going a bit nuts on this. Now, I will fully admit, I certainly have in the past here and there, I've rein myself in. But as long as you're careful and safe with it, you can very easily play the game free to play, honestly. You don't have to spend a penny. Plenty of people free to play it, and there are many very wonderful guides on how to go through the game without spending a single penny. Though, if you do spend a little bit on the gold currency here, you can convert it into rundum, and as such, maybe roll for one of these characters. Though, you know, roll responsibly, guys. Just remember that. Treat it like anything else, right? Get a few rolls, think, that sucks, just stop. Trust me, this is no point trying to overdo it. Especially when you might as well aim for the limited ones, because those have a pity mechanic. It's quite a high number, being 300 rolls, but at least you know how many you need to get who you want from that banner, at least. This one, you only get the choice of either Schwartz on the right there, who is 180 gold certs, which you get from pulling, and I believe one other. I do forget who it is this time around, but we shall go to the store. Ignore this one on the right here, she will try and drain all of your money. Ignore anything that one says. Ifeta. Yes, so your choice is essentially either a high damage ranged operator or somebody who pushes people around. Now, what that relevance is, you probably may not know, or you may do, but I'll get into that later. Point is, some people you can guarantee and get, others, and most of the list you cannot. In fact, most likely you'll roll that banner, you may get someone completely different, as there is a small chance, and it does give you the chance, that you could get someone else entirely from the live list here. These 5 ladies here are on extra likely to get, though you are likely to get some of these as well, depending on how you roll. But it should be noted that there's a good chance you could roll for a 6-star, like these two, and get a 2% chance of any one of these. That is possible. Now, there are some characters that will not be, and as is quite common in gacha games, some characters will not be gachable most of the time. A good example here, this is not the original version of the operator, this is a later on version which gets a fancy little live 2D just to, make it extra special. But the point is, you will not see Texas the Omatosa in normal rolls. She's exclusive to anniversary rolls. So if anyone's looking now, it'll be a while till she comes back. So I'd wait for later on in the year if you want a limited mana. Altar operators typically are limited, though there are a few there is now a couple of exceptions. The first 6-star one being Reed Altar here. That one surprisingly isn't limited. It's a new thing, but most time a human altar is limited. So if you want them, you may want to splash a little, but again, do it responsibly, guys. Don't burn your free wallets. It's just a PNG, it will come back eventually. Just have patience. Now then, the game, like many other gachas, of course, is gameplay. Now, we'll pick one of these out here. For example, I don't know, a bit of grinding just on the background. It gives you a good demonstration of the gameplay. Now, and of course you get this little voiceover from one of the operators, I believe that's Pens, you may be able to hear in the background. I don't believe I deploy her in this one, but this gives you an idea of just what you could expect in the background. Now, as I say, despite the gameplay here, there's also a surprisingly large amount of lore, actually. Though, I must admit, it is not the most happy-go-lucky kind of lore. It is the kind of thing that, well, needless to say, can get rather depressing. Shall we say, some characters are not well, medically speaking. They are suffering from an infection known as oropathy. Reed, for example, in the back there, is very recently been infected, so the signs of it aren't too bad on her, but on others, black crystalline structures can be seen protruding from their bodies, and it will slowly infect their entire body, killing them. As you might imagine, a crystalline structure going through your organs is not exactly prudent to long life. But Rhodes Island, the group that now many of these operators now work for, or even work with, has ways to help break apart the crystals and even slow the progress of the infection, though truly they want for a cure, and at the moment no one has the option for one. Now, that may change in time. We'll have to see as the story develops. Currently though, there is yet to be a cure found, only ways to moderate it. Now, you might wonder, who on earth are you in all this? Who are you, the player? And you may be surprised that you're not quite a self-insert, but you see a lot of the game through the perspective of the Doctor. Who is the Doctor? The Doctor is essentially, in a way, how you interact with the game. Hence, everyone refers to it as Doctor. But it's not really a, how should we say, the Doctor isn't so much a, you in the game, not self-insert, what I'm looking for, has his own character, but doesn't have a clue who he is. But for all intents and purposes, assume it's you in a way. And, well, you don't have to know why you're here, what's going on, but what you do know is, one, you are not exactly medically well yourself, not because of the infection, but because of a variety of conditions of your own, in this case. Meaning you must wear that protective suit you can see on screen there. Now, without it you will most certainly not be in a good state. And you require a particular director who needs to even stay alive, so you're not in a great state yourself, but you're in good enough state to command. And, well, command you do, as it's up to you really to lead the Rhodes Island operators to, well, deal with a lot, to put it lightly. From movements such as Reunion, who are I suppose, a terrorist movement, but also a revolutionary movement as well. They seek to bring justice to the infected, as most governments in the Arknights setting don't exactly take kindly to them. In fact, most would, for lack of a better term, look to destroy them on sight. Many, for example the URSS government, a sort of Russian equivalent type country, very much throw them into the mines and work them to death, or just kill them outright. Other places exile them, some will just throw them to the slums, like in Lungmen. You may hear me mention a number of nations. I will later on do subsequent videos speaking about those nations in particular. But, either way, the infected do not have it easy. They're not your only problem though. Sometimes you have to deal with members of the Ursus forces. Either way, you may have to deal with them or elements of them. On top of this, later on you'll be dealing with various mercenary groups and even another revolutionary movement, though in this case for a very different reason. But I will get onto Dublin and some of the other factions at a later date. But for the majority of the game, until Chapter 8 at least, you'll be dealing with Reunion. And pretty much exclusively Reunion. As they are a major threat to not just yourself, but many other places around. Not only because there's a lot of them, but they are well organised, and their leader, Tallulah, is, well, let's just say at the moment, not exactly caring much for morality, and is quite keen on bringing Lungmen to its knees. Lungmen being the place that you'll be staying and helping for quite a while. You introduced them fairly soon on. For those who've seen the anime, yes, there is an anime of Arknights, which is getting another season soon. You go to Lungmen as part of a job, essentially, after you escape where you were woken up in Chernobog. Let's just say, without going into too much detail, there were losses. Quite a few losses. Things did not go well. The place was already in a catastrophe. An extreme weather front that was not only dropping crystalline structures, which is the Originium, the thing that started Europe in the first place, but also just devastating winds ripping through the place. And let's just say when Originium crystals fall, they fall hard and they fall heavy in fiery balls in some cases. Needless to say, not something you're going to get hit by. Not helped by the fact that Tallulah herself is, in a sense, a walking calamity. Being infected, she's able to utilise, let's just say, what would appear to mostly magical power. It's not so much magic, but a thing called art. Hers is extreme fire. And I say extreme, I mean holes through buildings, and just a walking catastrophe, to say the least. I think is the best way I can honestly describe it. Her being there is bad enough, let alone the likes of her lieutenants, such as Faust, for example, a very deadly sniper, or Mephisto, a strategist, but also a bit of a madman, to say the least. One who you will come to truly despise later on, as in time he goes somewhat off the deep end, which can, well, I'll get into that later, but it's not great. Whereas Faust, not nearly as problematic, but certainly he's not on your side either. On top of this, dealing with their assassination specialist, Crown Slayer, who is nothing to be messed with either. In fact, very nearly takes your life quite early on. Though in the city there's also the likes of Lieutenant Frostnova, though you will encounter her later, along with W, to put it lightly, an absolute madwoman, who is obsessed with explosives and is a bit of a nihilist. Again, needless to say, a danger to you and everyone around you. Of course, you escape, barely. And when you're brought to Rose Island, you're immediately put to work as soon as you've had a quick rest. As there is truly the rest of the wicked, and, well, they didn't just rescue you for nothing. They needed someone to command the forces. And locked away somewhere deep in your noggin is knowledge. Knowledge that is useful to Rhodes. Though you don't remember any of it, and only occasionally are graced with its return. However, more than ever, they are in need of your extensive knowledge of Originium, your knowledge of commanding forces, and whatever else comes relevant, as the Doctor is into a bit of a workaholic who's learned a lot of different skills, and thankfully, he is still quick to pick things up, or re-remember things if needed. But it may or may not be enough, depending on who you ask, considering you not only have to deal with Reunion, but the many governments of the world, each of them with their own interests and their own opinions on the infected. Needless to say, not all the infected are very pleasant back to them either. A good example would be Lapland here. We will get into further detail of her at a later date, but our dear Lappy is a bit crazy. Her infection drove her somewhat more insane, but also made her very powerful, as it does for many, essentially allowing one to wield arts, magic in a sense, without equipment, which would normally contain a small crystal of originium itself. This can be used for healing, throwing fireballs out, and other rather crazy abilities. Though not every magical-like thing is arts, there are some individuals, which we'll get into later, who seemingly are able to use something similar without it being arts. However, assume most magical shenanigans is arts of some descript, as, well, it is predominantly how a lot of things that hand-waved in the world. How does someone summon meteors from the sky? Arts. It's fairly wide and varying, but it does seem to have to be a learned skill. Some are more talented than others. Some can kind of just do it, especially if they're infected. But for the most part, it seems to be a thing you have to learn. And those who are masters of it are truly something to behold. Be that as an amazing healer, or be it as someone who can truly devastate armies. Of course, there are plenty of operators who are neither, and are still fairly effective. And we will get into quite a few of those, so if you're interested, then perhaps we shall get into detail in some of the individual nations, and maybe some of the operators who are from those said nations. I imagine a few of you may be interested in groups like, for example, the Abyssal Hunters. Perhaps, maybe even, people from the nation of Syracusa, which is a essentially mafia-run state, or other various groups. And you may get a bit of whiplash from the sheer diversity of the setting. The amount of different places, from the likes of Iberia, which has an Inquisition and eldritch horror, Seaborn bursting onto the banks, with the Abyssal Hunters almost been like a Bloodborne-like group, to Syracuse with its mafia, to Colombia, which is more like America, to Sargon, which is sort of like a Middle Eastern tropical empire, with its variety of sandstone buildings and tribal groups out in the wilds, to somewhere like Khazadel, a hellhole essentially, with the Sarkaz people fighting each other daily, in a nation that truly wishes to live, but very few of us would agree with it, to somewhere more holy like Laterano, home of the Sancta, the angels with guns. Yes, there is an angel with a shotgun. There's a couple of them actually. We'll get into those, don't you worry. I think I've probably rambled on long enough though, and I'm sure this has been cringy enough for you, so I will spare you for now. If you enjoyed it, let me know. Maybe drop a like if you think this is somehow worth your time, and I don't know if I can even dare ask you for a subscription, but if somehow I've endeared you, then please let me know and drop a subscribe. I may try and do a few more of these, honestly. This has been quite relieving on my mental health, actually, so let's see how it goes. Anyway, that's all for now. I've been Baron Zarko Brell, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.